Welcome to Left at the Door. This is a podcast and a vlog where all of us, a group of friends, come together. We talk about our experiences, people, thought patterns that we left at the door in order to love and grow, succeed, and survive. These are our stories, and this is Left at the Door. I'm Cassie Yoder.
I'm Kabeji Mulamed.
I'm Sarah Easter.
I'm Andrea McGee.
I'm Jessie Porter.
And this is Left at the Door. So let's dive into it. We started this conversation months ago, and I feel like I've had this conversation with each of you individually of like, we should start a podcast, or you have good insight, or I want people to know that story. And then it kind of has, grown over time. But I think that the idea where we couldn't really think of a name was definitely something that we talked about internally for quite a bit of time,
Right. And then I took the opportunity of a full moon. Do you remember that?
That's what I was going to say. I knew it dealt with the full moon.
Yes. I learned this practice of doing a full moon bath, and you meditate in the bath, and it can help you open up your mind and things come to you. So I set the intention, and we had been together very recently, right before that.
Yeah. I think we were on our very first call for this podcast that night together.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember talking about that.
That's right, because I was like, I remember seeing your faces.
Yes.
But I don't go anywhere. Yes,
Now,
it
I
wiped
have
my
to
memory.
say, I think it was the day of the podcast I got the message, do you want to be in a podcast?
Yeah, I was like,
oh sure. Did not realize what I was getting myself into, but I was like, why not?
That was part of it, though. I didn't want you to think about it.
And
I was
I was kind of glad you did that, because I was not nervous, freaking out. But until I came and I started doing this, wait a minute, what?
Mm-hmm. That was
you wrote down. So.
Yeah. But it was kind of good because we had to have that call and things like that and kind of thought about stuff. But the name was just like, well, what are we going to do with this?
Yeah.
I gave up. Even though we joke and we were like, oh, words are a thing. I was like, I can't.
What was it? Welcome to the shit show.
Welcome to the shit show.
Yeah.
And I'm in the bathtub doing my meditation, and I'm like, oh, that's good. Dry off my hand, grab my phone, and I'm just like, I probably sent you 15 things.
There was.
And some of it was, I'm sure, nonsense.
Some of them were good. I was like, this could be good for something else.
Yeah.
I feel like it was like a whole bunch of Shark Tank ideas that you manifested out of that bathtub.
And there were things that I sent that, and then I was like, I won't remember it. I just need to send it now. And then I'm like, I'm going to meditate some more. And then I look at it afterwards, and I'm like, what did that even mean?
Yeah.
What did that mean? That means nothing.
Right.
And that's the one she picks. Left at the door.
Well, and I think that it's one of those things that, to me, the phrase, and I feel like it probably means something different to each of you, but I think that in a lot of ways, it can have a good or a bad connotation to it.
Mm-hmm.
That sometimes it is good and it is relieving to shed and leave things behind that you're like, this is just no longer serving me.
I feel like this is a really good timing for not only this podcast, but that name, because everybody's just so ready to be done with this pandemic, with 2020. We're just ready to shed all of this, leave it behind, and jump into something new and something good. So I feel like it's a really good timing to reflect on the things that we just want to leave at the door and start focusing on our future selves.
Yeah, absolutely. But I also think that from the reverse, it's sometimes it's really difficult to accept and know that you have to leave something at the door, or that you have to leave something behind, because I think it's part of it is self-reflection, and part of it is that acceptance of acknowledging the baggage that you have, or the shit that you've brought to the table, that you're okay, I need to sort through this is heavy, and that's a painful experience for people to go through.
Well, and I think it's human nature to resist loss. So even if the things you're getting rid of are things that are making you healthier and allowing you to grow, there's still the grieving process.
Yeah.
And it's not fun.
That's true.
Even if it's healthy, and even if it's facilitate growth.
Another thing to piggyback on top of that, Sarah and I were talking earlier about things that you just do out of habit. So whether it's relationship patterns, and it could be personal or professional, but things, and it ultimately comes down to, we're talking about that phrase, the devil you know.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's you just do these things because it's what's comfortable. And I feel sometimes that's what Left at the Door also reminds me of we do things out of comfort, but that doesn't mean that it's the right thing. Like sometimes the best thing to do is the hardest.
Growth is uncomfortable.
It is.
Growth is painful, but that's the people who are having the life they want to live and are making strides towards their goals. You know, there's the saying, like, nothing great happens in your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So it requires that growth. But yeah, that the devil, I think is what keeps people paralyzed so often from doing something at all.
Yeah, it's true. So Kabeji, Sarah, one of the things I was like thinking about is we've talked about this, Generation Z, and you guys are like on that cusp of like Gen Z and millennials and things like that. So do you think that you guys have a different perspective, because I'm interested in that, of like what you leave at the door versus like maybe me being like 10 years older, what I've left at the door?
I definitely think that our generation is more stubborn and we don't like to listen to anybody. And so we're more willing to leave things at the door because we're just like, no, fuck you guys, don't tell us what to do. And then that leads us to either growth or a setback, depending on what it is. But also like we have really weird ways of handling things. Like our coping mechanisms aren't necessarily super healthy, but we also can't afford therapy. So we're all just in this together. And
I feel like our generation is a lot about breaking stigmas.
Yeah.
Like this is the first generation that refuses to not be heard. And we're also the first generation that is trying to break down the stigma on mental health and the problems that are going on in the world right now and just all these different things. So I think that's really important to note that like I've always been somebody that my voice needs to be heard,
Absolutely.
but a lot of my friends are like that because we're the first generation that's finally stepping up and not backing down.
I also feel like we care a lot less about our lives than prior generations. I just mean that like we know how important changing the future is for like the future generations and like our siblings and our children and our friends' kids. And so all of us are kind of just like, if I have to go out this way to make the world better, fine. And that's really dangerous. But
I don't think it's dangerous. I feel like you're passionate. You actually take a stance on things instead of being like, well, I don't really know if I should get involved.
You put your money where your mouth is.
yeah.
Specifically, the thing that I think of with you bringing that up was the Black Lives Matter protest that you did.
Yeah, Sarah and I both
And
were out there.
so when you were doing that, I talked to my husband, Dustin, and said, are we busy? Could we go?
Yeah.
Whatever. And ultimately, what he said to me was, well, one of us could. We can't both go. We have children.
Yeah.
What if something happens and we're attacked? Now we have orphans. Or if we take them with us, and what if something happens to one of them? How would we live with that? And it's like those. I know that part of that is like the fretting and worrying we've inherited from our parents.
Yeah.
That's like worst case scenario, because I'm a like silver lining, sunshine and rainbows person, but that thought is still there. Like the worst thing that could happen is we would be attacked for doing this.
Yeah. And then there's us without kids who are just like, we're ready to go. Like,
my dad is a perfect example of that. He is all for like Black Lives Matter and fighting for rights, but he doesn't quite understand putting your life on the line for Black brothers and sisters. And I was like, Dad, sure, I could die doing this, I could get hurt doing this, something bad could really happen, but my Black friends are way more susceptible to it than I am, so I'm going to put my body in front of them to protect them because they deserve to be protected. I have white privilege already, just by my looks, so like, it is my job to protect them and to help them have their voice heard.
We had the same struggle when it was Pride Month. And they were doing, because Dustin and I have gone to things like that, but this year it was right after George Floyd was killed, and then Pride was happening, and we had planned to take the kids. And with COVID, obviously, we were like, but then also, I don't feel comfortable putting my innocent children in an environment with a compromised group of people who are a targeted group of people.
That just gave me goosebumps because it's crazy that we're even still having this conversation in 2020. Like,
but it is. And then also me saying that's something worth dying for. But I cannot make that choice for my children. They are, at the time, 1 and 3. And feeling like, genuinely feeling that's something that would be worth dying for. but I can't.
So I think that one of the things that we've learned is that sometimes you can use your voice in different ways, and that maybe that is in the form of a protest, maybe that's in the form of saying something on social media. But I think what we've learned is that we have such colorful backgrounds that all of us really have left something different at the door. I mean, Andrea, we've talked before where you were not born an American citizen and you have now become one. I'm sure you left something completely different than what we've left behind at the door.
Absolutely. I mean, the assumption of when I came to this country, before I assumed that everything was great, everybody treated fairly. But then I realized that I left my country and I feel like I'm back in a third world country, and especially lately with all the police brutality, with our election, and it's just, I was talking to my mom, Barbara, and we just were like, is this real?
Mhm.
When did America became so, should I say, ignorant?
Oh,
At some point, when did America become so ignorant? When did we all stop caring and start hating? Like, we just forget that we're one. And one of the things is like, I feel like we're all divided. We're the United States. We're America. We're one. We're not divided. We're not a divided country. Everybody's one. We are in one country. And the other thing is that the world is looking. Somebody's looking outside. And that's the biggest thing is like, okay, we're fighting among ourselves while the world is watching. There's so much going on. We're vulnerable right now. How bad is that? When September 11th happened, I was in the country. I just came to the country and I would never forget that day. I was living in Texas. And I received a phone call because I have family living in New York.
Right, yeah.
It hit so hard because I'm watching this on TV. I'm at the dorm getting ready for class. And here I am not knowing what's going on with my family at September 11th. It's a mess. So went to class, received a phone call. The secretary came in to grab me out of the class. All classes canceled. The teacher was like, Andrea, you need to go. And so that day we're in a big, huge auditorium and all of us were just praying and we came together. Doesn't matter what background you are, we're not even fighting. We came together. So it took an event like that because it was foreigners attacking United States of America. But now we have a situation where in 2020, Americans are attacking each other and fighting. So we're not coming together. We're not united. And it's a big problem. And that's why my assumption that I left to the door was my home country, Guyana, South America, is a third world country. We're backwards. Every election, we expect the same thing, rioting, police brutality, whatever it is. But we always expect that. But after that, after election is over, we moved on. United States of America now, I came here and it's election and it's over, but we're still fighting. We cannot move on.
I think that that's a really good point where, you brought up that there's been so much division. And I think that was a huge part of maybe even connecting all of our stories together, because I think that in a lot of ways, people are looking for that comfort. It's like, where is the commonality? And I know that even though, there's going to be things that we all sitting here at this table don't always agree upon. And I think that that really comes down to and speaks to the fact that you can still have differences, but you can still unify, and that somehow we're all still humans.
Right.
I think Brene Brown talks about how it's really hard to hate someone up close. And in many of her books, she talks about that it's like, it's easy to blast something on social media, or it's easy to say something to somebody behind somebody's back or whatnot. But when you look them in the eye, it's really difficult. So I think in a lot of ways, that's what we're hoping this podcast is that it showcases the uniformity and the cohesiveness that, at the end of the day, we're all humans, and that there is something positive to come out of any interaction with someone, even if you feel like at first maybe we're different, you know?
Hi, I'm Sarah and I'm the owner of Bad Love Creative Co. I'm a photographer that services both Central Illinois and Chicago areas. This year has been incredibly difficult for me. I've had lots of cancellations due to shutdown. Prairie Commons Business Collective has helped me bring awareness to my clients. The marketing has let people know that I'm still here and I'm taking clients. I'm taking social distancing measures, and that is how my photo shoots go. Prairie Commons Business Collective has really helped get more clients and to reach new people. One of the things I love most about Prairie Commons Business Collective is that there's a place for everybody, which is something I value most. It's a community of people of all business types. So whether you're a crafter or a photographer like me, or even a furniture maker, there's a place for you.
Hi, this is Chrissy from Giggles in downtown Decatur. Just wanted to let you know that we are open for business. Our customer safety is our #1 priority here at Giggles. Know that we are sanitizing and cleaning regularly and always wearing a mask. Please remember this holiday season to support your local businesses.
So I have a friend named Abigail who is a clarity coach, and she said something to me that is, I don't want to butcher it, but something like, judgment is the illusion of separation. And when what you see and dislike in someone that you don't, it's because you're seeing that reflection of it in yourself. And it wouldn't bother you so much if it wasn't so familiar.
I do not agree.
No?
No, I don't agree.
What's your thoughts?
Specifically just because I know for a fact, like, there have been so many situations where something that someone's done or believed, like, it's hurting somebody. It bothers me because it's hurting somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for a fact that I don't feel that same way. Like, no ounce of me feels a certain way that even comes close to how they're feeling. And it bothers me so much because I know the kind of harm that they're causing.
Yeah.
So I think, like, with little things that might be true, you know, like things that don't matter so deeply, but I feel like whenever it comes to, like, people's lives or well-being, like, that's a whole different story.
Well, and I think that, maybe it depends on, like, the topic, where if it's like, you know, oh, that girl and her earrings, or whatever the case, or something like, you know, that is meaningless, that it's like, okay, well, what is that? What are you projecting on that person, you know, and for what reason?
And, I mean, we see it with, like, people in relationship issues, you know, they'll see someone else's relationship and dog it because they're dealing with the same thing at home, you know?
Yeah.
So that, like, again, I just don't want people to misinterpret it as in, like, someone's like, no, you cannot wish death on an LGBTQ couple because you're unhappy. Okay, so Andrea, I know that you had said something about how, you know, America is so divided right now. I think we've been divided for so long. It's just so out in the open now because of recent events, like within the last 10 years even, where you're seeing people's true colors because it's being normalized. And I think that that's scarier than it being hidden, because these people who you may have known for a long time, oh, you felt like this forever. You just feel okay with stating it now, as opposed to being scared before.
And you have keyboard warriors.
Yes.
Who are emboldened by their anonymity. And like you said, it's being normalized to just be hateful all the time.
Absolutely.
So people just say it, and now because we are all connected to each other electronically more than ever before, and because people use Facebook as a diary, we get to hear and see their intimate thoughts that, you know, there's that whole, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all.
Right.
Do you feel like that's also vanishing with your generation? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but really, like...
I mean, we're a very blunt, to-your-face generation. Like, we have no problem saying, oh, you're a bigot, you know, whereas maybe before it's like, okay, well, maybe you shouldn't say things like that. No, like, we will tell you that you're ignorant, or that you need to go educate yourself and we can continue this conversation later. Like, we have no problem with standing up and saying, hey, you're wrong and this is why.
And it also, I feel like, deals with boundaries as well. I
Yeah.
think that in my relationship with each one of you, I think that we all like learn lessons from people in our lives, you know?
Definitely.
And that's one of the things that I think about is that sometimes it comes down to boundaries of saying, like, just because this person is in my life, maybe it's because of a work relationship, or this person is a family member. That doesn't mean that their personality traits or their opinions of things need to just, I guess in a lot of ways, cause a whole bunch of turmoil in your overall life. But I think many of the viewers and listeners can sit here and say, I have those relationships or I have those people in my life, and their opinions, they put them out there and they just want to kind of drive them home. And I think that sometimes even just leaving those relationships at the door can make all the difference in just your overall well-being.
I feel like it's important to realize when somebody doesn't want to be educated, they just want to spew their opinions on you, and like they think they're educating you when really they're just shoving things down your throat. And I think it's important to realize, okay, I can't have a conversation with this person, I cannot educate them, so I'm going to just leave that solely at work, or just not even have them in my life at all. Or they're a family member, I see them once at Christmas, I don't need to talk to them, they don't need to be on my Facebook. And I think it's important to set those boundaries for yourself and catch yourself whenever you're trying to educate them, or you're just putting your heart and soul into talking to them about these things and they just don't retain any of the information or understand at all.
Well, I agree, because it's so hard to have a conversation with someone who never wants to hear you. I mean, I have a friend, and he was my customer at Walmart. I'm not sure how our friendship started, but he and his girlfriend, he and his girlfriend at the time would come in all the time. They would only come to me, super nice to me. So anyway, we grew a friendship over the years. He's friends with a bunch of my friends, and we don't agree on anything. Like, anything I post, I know he's looking at it and he's like, oh no. Anything he posts, I'm just like, okay, well. So, I mean, not just like politically, but just in general. And throughout everything this year, we have been able to, we've always been able to have conversations, and he hears me and he asks to like be educated. Like, you know, usually I'd be like, homie, you have Google. It's not my job to educate you. But when you're my friend, and the things that I'm talking about as a Black woman who's bisexual, who's a child of an immigrant, who is an immigrant in America, lots of things affect me. So for a friend to sit here and say, hey, help me understand. Okay, I will. I'm not going to tell you to go turn to Google. So I just find that, like, speaking to someone closer my age, they're generally a little more open than like 40-something-year-olds, 50-something-year-olds, because a lot of times they're very stuck in their way, and you're so much younger, you don't know shit, you haven't had any life experience, you know?
And that's a generational thing too.
Yeah.
So when it comes to modern technology, sometimes things just don't go as planned. So for the most part, my personality is like planned for everything. That's just in my nature. And I thought that I had done so, but I was wrong because I forgot to check the storage that was left. So the storage capacity stopped at 30 minutes because I ran out of space.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was my next question, honestly. So, but do you guys feel that our generation is still in denial, even though with all social media and all these information out there for us to learn? Do you still think, like, if Sarah, someone, or for me, example, do you think I'm in denial and I'm still stuck in my generation, or it's easy to educate someone like me?
I think, I don't know, because I got really lucky. Like, we both did.
Yeah.
You guys are more than willing to listen. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's different for you three.
Yeah.
And for our listeners, if you don't know who I'm talking about, Cassie, Jesse, and Andrea, they're very open and understanding and listening. But I feel like it's mixed. You either get one or the other. And I think it's just because you guys are that middle generation of, like, we want to listen, but we're also kind of stuck in always.
They love to pull the, oh, I was just your age. You don't know anything.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, actually.
I feel like there have been instances in our conversations that it's been like, I remember what it was like to be 24.
Yeah.
And I don't ever intend for it to be condescending.
Mm-hmm.
I also think something I've left at the door is that fear of being wrong. You know, when I grew up, there was nothing worse to be than wrong about something. You would be shamed. You were, and there's nothing worse than that. And now I'm excited when I realize, oh, I don't know everything about this. Now I get to learn about it. So that personality matching with someone who's like, okay, fine, sit down, I'll explain this. Like that's an exciting opportunity to me, where I know that that's not always the case. And people are so afraid of looking and feeling stupid. And trust me, like, I don't love the feeling, but I'm willing to experience it for the sake of growth.
Yeah.
And I think, like, back to assumption, one of the things that people assume is because, for example, Sarah and Kabeji, they're younger than myself or Jesse or Cassie, that they don't know anything. But the truth is, 3 of us here can learn from this Sarah and Kabeji. And it's really interesting to hear their perspective, because what they know, we don't know. And for me, I love, if you can educate me, that's great, because not only you're educating me, but I have a 4-year-old, Talia, and I'm willing to learn what you guys know in your generation, so that I'm preparing myself. Okay, when it's time, when she gets this age, what do I have to look forward to? You know,
I think it could be like a two-way street,
It's a two-way street,
you know,
right?
because,
Let me ask the other demographic difference between the 3 of us on this side of the table and the 2 of you is that we have children.
Yeah.
So
That's true. That is true.
But but what I'm wondering, because you brought up Talia, I wonder how much of our openness is like, we need to do better for our kids.
Yeah.
And like you guys being friends with 3 mothers is different than maybe someone who, and I'm not saying that anyone without children is closed-minded, but I know we all have very similar takes on parenthood. And I, for one, am like, I don't know about being a person of color. So I would love to learn about your human experience, because I don't want my daughter walking through life being inadvertently offensive or hurtful or whatever, but I'm not the person to teach her that.
Right.
I feel like you see that a lot with parenting styles, like in our generation, especially, of like listening to the kid too. And like knowing that you can be wrong as a parent sometimes, and you can learn from your kid. I think I don't have kids, but all of my close friends have kids and or they're pregnant. So I have seen them parent, and that's like a common thread.
Absolutely.
And also, I used to be a youth leader. I was a youth leader for about 1.5 years. And that was one of the biggest lessons that I learned from being a youth leader, is I have so much to learn from those kids. Those kids taught me so many lessons about love and about life and accepting people no matter what than life has ever taught me. And I just think there's something important to be learned from all generations. I can learn from my grandma, but I can also learn from a high schooler at 22. It's important to listen and to be understanding instead of just talk.
I think that's a really good point too. And I think that's what, like, whenever we talked about like the two-way street thing, I think that sometimes it's just all in like a person's approach. That it's like, sometimes people will say things like, well, millennials won't listen to boomers, or, you know, and vice versa. But I just think to myself, sometimes it just depends on how it's being said. It also depends on the relationship that you have with those people, where, you know, I think it is important. Obviously, my son, Jack, he's 11, and a huge part of my raising him was putting him into a Montessori school, because I felt like the pedagogy of and the practices of Montessori are like that it's like a child is a human, and at some point he is going to be someone's father, he could be someone's spouse or partner. And I'm like, I am raising a human. And I think that it's interesting to see that sometimes the thing that I have left at the door is, like you talked about, being right. And I think it's good for him to see that and to have age appropriate conversations of saying, you know, Jack, today was a really hard day at work. And like, I'm in a bad mood, or I'm in a funk because of it. And this is why. And for him to understand that life is not just Disney and that life is not just like perfect, happy, everybody's great. And you come home from work and you're like whistling and like you want it to be reality. And I think that that's important. Or the times that I have been grumpy or I've snapped and I shouldn't have, like apologizing. Like he needs to know, and not just him, children need to know that where apologies and forgiveness and grace happen. Like it has to start with us. And sometimes, I mean, that's the hardest place.
So my kids, Charlie and Jimmy, who are 4 and 2, go to a Montessori school. Also, one of the things we have in common, and with you working at a Montessori school, Kabeji. So, and I'm sure you'll have something to do with Montessori.
I'm just here right now. Well, 10 years from now, I'll put my kids in Montessori.
Awesome.
Let me know.
Thanks.
Awesome. So there's a list of things that you should make it a point to say regularly to your children. I was wrong. I am sorry. And even going so far as to say, you were right. And instilling that confidence in them. And you're teaching them that it's not shameful to be wrong.
Yeah.
That it's good to have grace, to admit when you are not wrong or when you are not right. And I had just never seen a list like that, even though I do make a habit of treating my children like people and talking to them like they are adults and like they deserve respect. And that was the other thing about the Montessori way of doing things, is to respect where they are.
Yes.
Work
out of the process.
Kids at my school have literally been like, what'd you say? After I said, oh my gosh, I was wrong, I'm so sorry. Because they'd never heard that before. And I think about that a lot. I'm not a parent, but as like she said, like my friends are. And so I'm pretty consistently with my best friend's daughter. And the way that her parents parent is how I know I'm going to parent. And we always make sure to let her know, I am so sorry, or you were right, or, you know, Benji was wrong. I apologize, you know, and it gives them a confidence to speak up and
absolutely.
not be scared to be wrong, you know. And sometimes, you know, whenever I'm taking Aubrey, the 4-year-old, home, she'll be like, turn this way. And I'm like, okay. And then, like, she'll just tell me how to get to my house. Generally, she's right. There have been a couple of times I take an extra long way, but I just make sure to be like, wow, that was so, you know, intuitive, but, you know, a nice, kid-friendly word, you know, of you to tell me how to get home. Thank you so much. And, you know, it's just, I feel like things like that go so far with children. And I mean, even with adults, it goes far.
Yeah, we're training people how to treat each other.
Yeah, literally.
So I was raised on the complete opposite spectrum of that. My parents, given they were raising us the best that they knew how, because, you know, they didn't, I mean, look at the generation before them. So they were doing what they thought was right, and they just painted themselves as this perfect picture. They never did anything wrong. They never apologized for when they did stuff wrong. They just buried it down and expected us to not talk about it. And my dad and my mom got divorced in a nasty divorce about a year ago. And ever since then, my dad has been the parent to stuck around while my mom just left. And he has spent the past year unlearning all of those ways that he raised us. And he has apologized. We've had conversations about how they just pretended like things were perfect. And I said, Dad, you know, I don't really like how I was raised in that way, but you've taught me how, like, you've taught me the parent that I want to be. And I know it's not you. And he takes that the best way possible. But like, I don't know. I just feel like there were a lot of things that, like, I just grew up feeling insecure. I think that's why I apologize so much and I feel so insecure about myself. One of the reasons, not all of the reasons, but I think it all ties back into painting this picture that we're not perfect. We're all humans. We all have feelings, no matter what the age, 5 or 25 or 55 or 85. We're all humans and we all have feelings and we all need to be heard and understood.
You even say that about, like, if they have painted the picture of perfection and then you can't live up to that perfection, you're going to be apologizing for things. Like, gosh, I didn't meet that mark. I didn't hit that goal. I'm not doing what, you know, is expected of me and things like, and I think that then creates a narrative in us. But I do think that it's one of those things where we are, and I think the 5 of us, that's what our hope is over the course of this season with this podcast, is that in a lot of ways, leaving that perfection at the door, that, like, this is the perfect life. These are the perfect choices in order to have the perfect life. And these are the perfect jobs that you have to have. All of those things have to kind of go by the wayside, because I think that what we're realizing is that
because of this veil of perfection, so many people are either unhappy or just living a blatant lie. And I think that's what's so sad, that it's like, you know, in this day and age, the scariest and ultimately most courageous thing you can be is honest with either yourself or in your relationships or where you're at in this life. And yet, so many people are so afraid to do that.
Authenticity has so much value and is such a risk.
It really is. So my hope is that viewers and listeners tune in, and we will then be showcasing each individual of all of us on the podcast and what we individually left at the door, because I think that they can see from just this episode alone, we have a lot that we, you know, from the stories and experiences and the people and life experiences that we have really kind of molded us into who we are, and the things that we've learned from younger and older generations and things like that. So I think it's a lot of good stories. Yeah. So thanks for tuning in. And if you want to learn more about Left at the Door, you can find us on social media. You can also tune in on YouTube if you want to see the vlog. And of course, don't forget that there's lots of ways that you can connect and meet each one of the podcast hosts. And we're going to kind of be bringing other people on as well so that we can learn a little bit about what they left at the door in order to succeed and love and grow. So thank you for watching. This has been Left at the Door.